All right. Anyway, I guess I can I begin teaching.
Yep.
So the first thing I'll talk about is you'll notice that at the bottom of your underneath your player board, there's a little turn reference chart there that just sort of goes through each of the turn steps.
Yes.
Um, so the first phase is power up. That's when you would play cards that affect the board, your hero, whatever, before you move, and then you move and play cards after movement. And then there's the event card is drawn from the top of this deck over here,
Okay.
and read out loud, affects all players. And then you'll draw cards at the end of your turn from the exploration deck, which is there,
Okay.
equal to the number in the top, or say bottom right-hand corner of the skill that is face up on your hero at the time that you draw cards.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll explain movement. Okay, so the way that the movement phase works is, so we'll explain what the scenario is after, but so your hero will start on one of these start zone spaces there, with your queue up and facing in toward the board, and you can rotate them like
There we
that.
go.
So the movement phase always begins with a natural tumble. So that means in order to, in Tabletop Simulator, you kind of have to pick up your character first, and then tumble, or the other way around. Basically, you don't want to. Two things you don't want to do. You don't want to just click on your hero and then let go, because it's going to do this crazy stuff there. So if you're going to pick it up, basically you have to click and hold and then let go, and then you'll tumble, or you tumble before you pick it up. Just don't combine the two actions. If you tumble it while it's in the air, it's going to be problematic. Okay, so movement always begins with a tumble, and that's always just space, and you can move in any direction you like that's legal. You cannot move off the edge of boards. So you see this sort of orange brown line around the edges of the boards and down the center on this white building structure.
Yes.
That means it's impassable. You can't go through it, can't go over it, can't do anything. You have to go around. So an edge of the board is impassable. But on my turn to start my movement phase, I could tumble in the direction of you, like so,
Okay.
and push you. So you push other heroes in the direction of movement. Whoops. As long as they aren't obstructed on one side. So I'll just go through the way movement works. So on my first turn, I might do this. I'll tumble forward, and then anytime you tumble during your movement phase, you will activate skill that's face up on top. And in the case of my guy here,
Yep.
okay, so I'll continue. So on your turn, your movement always begins with a tumble.
Okay.
Then you'll activate the skill that matches the side of your hero that's facing up. So in this case, my back is up, and that is my tumble skill. So your movement skills are not the same as your initial tumble. The initial tumble is always 1. These skills can be enhanced. So the tumble skill starts at 1. That means I can tumble 1 space in any direction again. For example, there or here. Anyway, so once I tumble forward, I get to tumble again because that's my tumble skill. And anytime you tumble, at the end of your tumble skill, you get to activate whatever's face up on top at that point. So that means I get to now activate the skill associated with my feet, which is jump. And a jump of 2 means I can jump over something or onto something.
Okay.
And this right here is a wall. So you can't slide through a wall, you can't tumble through a wall, but you can jump over it. You can also jump onto a wall. So the movement number in the top left-hand corner of the skills is the maximum distance. But I could have just jumped 1 and landed on top of a wall. Once you're on a wall, you can move off. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so the other thing to know about moving is when you move on your turn, you always activate board elements first. So if you see here, there's a water arrow, and up here, this is a whirlpool.
Okay.
That's a secret token. These are crystals, whatever. But so as you move, you activate board elements first. So if I tumbled onto this space, before activating the skill for my face, which is in this case dash, I would have to move 1 space in the direction that the arrow is pointing. So the other spaces on water don't do anything special. Just just the spaces that are active. If you land on this space, the whirlpool, you rotate clockwise or counterclockwise 90 degrees and then carry on with your movement.
Okay.
So for example, if I started my turn here, for example, and I tumbled onto this, first I would have to spin, let's say there. Then I activate my face, which says I can dash one space, which means move my hero one space in any direction with each movement point. The other skills, diagonal slide moves diagonally. So if I was moving a diagonal of 2, I could do this. So you can change directions with each point, but you have to follow the sort of rule for that movement. This one is slide, so it's orthogonal movement like this.
Okay.
And tumble, which it lets you tumble, and you can change directions with each one. And at the end of your tumble, you activate the skill that's face up. If that skill is tumble again, like you tumbled 4 times, you don't get to tumble again. It's not infinite. And then jump, obviously, we've talked about. So anyway, I tumbled onto this. I rotated. Then I would activate my dash. If I dash here, I would then be moved here. If I had an additional movement point on my dash, first I dash here, it pushes me, and then I can dash to any other space around.
Okay.
The other thing to know about movement, in order to pick up something on the board, you have to land on it. So if I wanted to collect this crystal, I would have to move to the space where it occupies. I just pick it up and move it out of the way, and then that goes on my player board. If I land on something like a token like this, a secret token, I have to land on it. What I would do is basically, if I were here, I would just move this off to the side because it gets removed from the board, and then I would draw a secret token in this case, or a secret card. Those are here. Draw it, read it immediately. Sometimes they go to your hand. Most of the time, you just read it and something happens.
Okay.
So put this back. So there are different kinds of tokens and board elements in the game. So we saw whirlpools, we saw water currents. The other thing is there are pits. If you fall into a pit or are pushed into one, you essentially die and respawn at the nearest checkpoint. The checkpoints are the places we started.
Yeah.
So these things here, or any of those face symbols. And when you respawn, you go queue up and facing in any direction you like.
Okay.
If you're carrying something like a crystal, you would drop it. So if I fell into the pit here, I would drop the crystal onto a safe spot adjacent to that. And adjacent in this case counts diagonally as well.
Okay.
All right. I will briefly talk about the other types of tokens. So we have springs, teleporters, and walls are the most common tokens. We also have broken walls, but these act the same as a regular wall. They block movement. You can still jump over them. On the opposite side of these, if you hit the F key, it lets you flip it over. There's a opposite side on these as well. So you can break a wall, and that lets you move through that place. Anyway, so springs. When you step on a spring or are pushed onto one, you must jump 2 spaces orthogonally.
Okay.
And if someone pushes you onto a spring, they determine which way you jump.
Okay.
A teleporter. When you land on a teleporter, you roll a d6, and you do that by clicking on this little thing over here, this little die, and click on the number 1, and it'll roll a die. And that's how far you move, or up to that distance. So if I rolled a 3 on the teleporter, I would go 1. And you always count orthogonally, so I could go 1, 2, 3, for example, and land on the secret, or 1, 2, 3, whatever. If you roll a 6, you go nowhere and it explodes, but we won't worry about that unless it happens.
Okay.
And when you land on a teleporter or step on one, it ends your movement. So if you have 6 movement on your skill, whatever it is you're doing, and you land on it, you teleport, and then you basically stop. You don't get to keep moving with that skill. The same is true if you have if you're at the start of your movement phase and you tumble directly onto a teleporter. Okay. That wasn't supposed to happen. You teleport, but you don't get to activate the skill on top because you use the teleporter.
Okay.
And the last type of main common token are tunnels. When you step on a tunnel, these are optional. You don't have to use it. You can pass through to any other tunnel on the board.
Okay.
and that effectively ends your movement as well. The difference between tunnels and other types of board elements is because they're optional, you can finish your turn on it and not use it. And during your non-movement phases, like your power up or your power down phase, if you start your turn on a tunnel, you can pass through to another tunnel without using any movement points.
Okay.
And then you could begin your movement phase, kind of thing. I'll put these away, and that's essentially what we need to know about movement for the time being. If there's anything else, stealing. If you are adjacent to another player who is carrying a collectible, like a crystal or a sheep, there are no sheep in this scenario, that would be on my player board if I were carrying it. So I'll put that over here on the matching spot.
Okay.
If you're adjacent at any time while you're moving to someone, and that includes diagonally, you can steal one collectible item from them, like a crystal or a sheep, or yeah, that's pretty much it. And then carry on with your movement. Okay. So the last thing is the Q power. So if you tumble, so that if I say where I would like this, if I tumble so that my Q is up, I activate my Q power, and there are two elements to your Q. One is the Q skill tile, which is there. That's always associated with your Q. These other skills can be rearranged. Typically, you can place them anywhere you like at the start of the game, but they're currently placed in the sort of recommended default position. But the Q this tile must always be associated with the Q. So when you activate your Q, you get to do two things. The first is draw a secret, which is draw a card from this deck, flip it over, read it out loud, and something happens. And then the other aspect is your Q power, and that's this little tile here above your player board. It has two sides. When you activate your Q, you choose which side you wish to use and place it face up on the spot for it on your player board, and then do what it says. And each time you activate your Q, you can reselect which side you want. These two abilities, the Q power and the Q skill, you can use in whichever order you like, and you don't have to use them, but they are there and definitely worthwhile. So each player's Q power is unique. Q powers are unique. And the last thing I'll mention is these crystal powers. So when you're carrying a crystal, you put the crystal on the spot that matches the color. So if I have a pink crystal, I put it on there, and it gives you an immediate new ability. You can only carry two different things at a time, whether that's sheep or crystals or some other type of collectible. So you can't have all three crystals at once. So if you have too many and you pick up another one, you can drop something that you're carrying on an adjacent space.
Okay.
And that is all we need to talk about, regarding movement. But token placement, I will cover very, very briefly here. So if you're placing tokens on the board, actually we'll do that as part of cards. So at the end of your turn, you're going to draw cards equal to the number in the bottom right-hand corner of the skill that's face up. In this case, that would be my Q. I would draw two cards from the exploration deck as the last action on my turn. So I'll briefly talk about cards here. So these are the three kinds of cards you'll find in the exploration deck.
Okay.
Food cards have, they're typically like a potion bottle. They have a little potion icon in the top center, and they typically affect your hero in some way. Not all of them do exactly, but for the most part they do. And this says, plus you roll a die, basically. In this case, there are many that most of them you don't have to roll a die, and then you get the bonus or whatever based on the die roll. So this would say +2 to all skills. So that means my movement skills this turn are +2 movement if I wish to them to be. So this applies to skills you would play it before. So the little icon in the top left-hand corner, it has a green arrow. That means you have to play it during your power-up phase. Once you start moving, you can no longer play cards, essentially. So anything you want to do that's going to improve your hero before you move, you want to do it before you move. Cards are very important, so don't neglect them. They're going to really improve your ability to go. So the other type of card is a rune card. Runes typically place something on the board or alter the boards in some way. They look like some sort of a cube, and they have the little cube icon here, and they can be played either in the power up or power down phase. And there's a range in the top right-hand corner. So that range of 7 is the distance counted orthogonally from my hero. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. At which I can place one of those tokens. So I can build a wall, break a wall, or build a tunnel at range 7. So that's it. That works. And the last type of card in the deck is a tool card, and these are the least common type of card in the deck, and it's just sort of they have all different kinds of effects, but this one says discard your current item card, then draw 2 from the top of the end deck, pick one, and discard the other. So those are cards, and I'll put them back. You don't typically start with any cards in your hand, and I will now talk about why you've got 6 cards in your hand in front of you.
Okay.
At the start of the game, you choose one item and one pet. And you'll notice at the bottom center of these cards is a number. You can spend up to 5 points combined between your item and your pet card. The pet cards have a little paw icon and they're green, and the other items have a little gear icon. So you can basically choose one of each, but not spend more than 5 points total.
Okay.
And basically put them into place. So you'll see that there's kind of a slot to the right of your board for an item and to the left for a pet. And you'll just place it there. And an item and pet, items and pets, you can have only one of each type in the game by default. There are ways to change that. And you can activate them once per turn. I will take this. And that one. So you'll just basically drag the other extra cards out of your hand and put them on the table, and then we'll shuffle them back into the deck. Okay, so we essentially know what we need to know to play. So this scenario that we're doing here, the text on the left of the board here is not the correct text, but is a very simple race. So we are just trying to get to be the first one to reach this point right here.
Okay.
We have to go around this. You have to go around this big wall in the center, and it's first one there wins, essentially.
All right.
And that's it. So typically, to determine first player, we would high roll or have some way to do it. Here we have this die that chooses first player. I usually, when I'm teaching, play first just so I can explain, and I came up anyway. But how it works with the start line is that the player who goes first places their hero on the start line last. So obviously there's different advantages to being in different places on this start line. So you get to place your hero on the start line first in whichever of these 4 spaces you like. And I go last since I'm going first. Okay, so I will go there. And I'll start my turn. So I'm looking at my items and pets here. You can use these. Some of them are passive, some of them are active. So you have 2 active, very good items and pets. You can place tokens basically every turn. So it's a good idea to use those in many cases before you move. So if you, in your case, you can place a spring on the board, which is going to help you move farther, right?
Yes.
That stays on the board. Use it as well, but it won't help me because I'm going before you. But I have one passive pet, which lets me have 2 item cards in play and increases my hand size. So we didn't talk about hand size. You can have 5 cards in your hand at the end of your turn.
Okay.
So if you draw, you have more than that, you have to discard down to 5 at the end. But if you draw more cards during other players' turns, which is possible, you can keep them in your hand until the end of your turn.
Okay.
So anyway, nothing in my hand. I have nothing here that's active, but my rocket pack increases my jump skill, so that will help me this turn. So I'm going to start my turn by tumbling. Then I will tumble again because that's my tumble skill. And then I have my jump skill. So jump is 2 spaces, but I get +2 to that, so I can jump over 4 spaces. But that's in a straight line orthogonally. So I kind of want this crystal, but I'm not going to get it. I can't change direction.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So there. And that ends my movement phase. I have no cards to play, so I will go to the event phase. So I'll draw a card from this deck, flip it over. Actually, we didn't talk about event cards, but I'm just going to shuffle this really quick. Draw the top card, flip it over, and we do what it says. So this says, roll the directional die. All players slide 1 in the resulting direction. So
Okay.
this is the directional die. We roll that, and it says southeast. So there's a compass printed on the board here. So that means we slide southeast. So you're going to pick up this secret token. So that gets removed from the board. So you can just take it off and then draw a secret card.
Right.
So you draw it from this right here and then flip it over and read it out loud.
Pit trap.
Uh-oh.
You hear click as you shift your weight. Roll directional die 3 times. For each die roll, place a pit 1 space from your hero in direction shown on the die. Can't be placed in that direction, so 3 of them.
Yep, so you can actually just increase it to 3 and then...
There we go. All
So
of
2
them,
southeast, which you cannot, and then the other one is west.
which I can, because it's right there.
Yep, so the pit tokens are here. There you go, and that resolves that event.
Okay.
Or that resolves the secret. Most of the secrets are actually friendly, so that's one of the rare ones that's not. Although it didn't hurt you too badly.
Okay.
And then I draw for my turn, so I draw 1 card because that happens after the event. And I just do that from here, and it's your turn.
All right, so I can only move right here. Pull that direction.
Oh, but what you could do is you could place a spring token first. So
Okay.
before you move, right? So you could figure out how far you're going to move with that skill. That's diagonal slide, right? So you would tumble to here, and that would be your diagonal slide skill, because that's what matches that arm that would be face up.
Yeah.
So you could place a spring token right here, and that way you would diagonal slide onto it, jump over the wall to here, and then diagonal slide 1 more time.
Okay.
Do you follow? Yep.
Yes, yes, yes.
Before you move, there you go.
There.
And then you can diagonal slide 1 time, and then that's going to push you downwards because you're landing on the water arrow there.
And I don't rotate though, right?
Nope. Only if you landed on the whirlpool. But your diagonal slide could have gone in this direction if you wanted.
Yeah.
That way you could turn tumble back onto there. So you don't have to keep moving in the same direction with your diagonal slide as long as it's diagonally. So I'll let you choose which way you go. There you go. And
Then I draw
so
an
now
event
you
card.
could. Yep, or you could use this guy if you wanted to build a wall or something to block me. You could actually be particularly cruel and place a wall right here. The rule is if you are blocked in, for example, if you had placed a wall here, I wouldn't be able to tumble to perform my natural tumble. So if you're unable to perform your natural tumble during your turn, or at the start of your turn, you can respawn to the nearest checkpoint. So it wouldn't really be doing you a favor to block me in right there.
Yeah.
But it is an option. You could always place it here, for example, to slow me down, but that would also slow you down. But anyway, so it just demonstrating the fact that you can place a token with this guy each turn as well.
Okay, and it's range 6,
So, yeah.
and I can go past these barriers, right?
You cannot go past this barrier.
Okay, so
nothing. You'd have to count range around that.
Okay, all right, that works. All right. Well, let's see. I'm not going to put anything down this turn, so I'm done.
Okay. All right. So
I
now
draw
you
an event card. Yep. Starting with the active player, all players draw a card from the Explore deck.
So you go ahead and take a card.
Put that in my hand, right?
Yep. And then you get to draw cards equal to the skill that's face up, which is
1.
And that ends your turn. This gets discarded, and it's my turn. So
Okay.
now that I have cards in my hand, I could potentially play them before I move. And I'm going to hold on to my cards for now, but let's see what skill is going to be there. Diagonal slide. All right, I'm just going to tumble to here.
Okay.
And then that activates my diagonal slide. I can diagonal slide twice, so 1, 2. So I didn't explain what happens when you land on top of another hero. So if you were to jump and land on top of another hero, you can push them in any direction that's allowed. So I couldn't push. So if you landed on top of me, you could push me to here, 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 or here, but not into the wall
Okay.
or through this one. Just letting you know what happens when that happens, and I will hold on to all of my cards. My skills don't do anything for me right now, so I'll end my turn and draw an event. So now we have a trigger. So the final version of this card will actually be slightly different. It won't actually say anything like this in the top. But what the important part of cards that have this thing on the bottom is that they activate our upgrades. So we get to upgrade one of our skills on our player board. So each of these skill tiles has 2 sides. So basically you're going to choose, you can take a look at what's on the other side. They increase your movement. Sometimes they're special powers. But yeah, I am going to increase my dash. And so the other things that would happen here is if there were moving board elements, they would move like, yeah, there are some boards that have things that can move around on them. Sheep would move, and in this case, they would move twice, and then bombs, if there are any bombs on the board, they would also move. So that's what happens when there's a trigger. And then I draw for my turn, which is 1 card, and it's your turn.
Okay. Right here activates my back, which was just upgraded, so I get to move 3 now orthogonally.
Yep. You get to tumble 3 times, and then activate something afterward.
Here. I move all 3 times, right?
You choose, right? So it's wherever you stop. So you'd only activate the skill that's on top now if that's where you stopped your tumble, but you can still tumble 2 more times and then activate what's on top afterward.
I jump, I move 2.
Yep. So you can,
right here.
yeah, land on the crystal.
Yeah, so I can take the crystal. Crystal down to my board.
Yep, and that says you may when you use a spring, you may jump from 1 to 3 spaces. So that the text on that will actually say increase the range of a spring by 1, because normally a spring jumps 2 spaces. So it just lets you. It also lets you jump a shorter distance on a spring than you normally would.
Okay. And then now that I've moved, I can do my power down.
Yep, and you could have placed tokens as well here, using your items and pets, either before or after you moved.
Okay. So I'm going to activate this card right here, which is Lodestone. So I'm going to discard my current item card, which is this one, the Spring Launcher.
Yep.
And then I'm allowed to draw 2 and then keep 1.
Yep.
And would I essentially just shuffle a deck again after I choose 1?
Yep. Oh no, those would just go to the discard pile.
Oh, okay.
For that deck, yeah.
I rearrange when I respawn. Oh, okay. I'm going to take that one.
So that increases the range of your respawn.
Yes, it says
So
anything within 10.
yeah, so if you, for example, jumped into this pit, you could
Mm-hmm.
respawn ahead. It's
As long
handy.
as it's 10.
Yeah, within 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's
So that.
done. Now I draw one of.
Yep. Yep. There.
I would draw an event card. Says minced emotions. All players draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card.
So you
That's
go ahead
these
and draw two.
ones.
Yep. You can just hit the number 2 as you hover over the deck, and it'll draw 2 to your hand, or 1, or whatever. So you don't have to discard the one of the cards you just drew, just one from your hand in general.
Okay.
So I will get rid of this one.
So what inspired you to make this game?
um, that's interesting. I At the time that I came up with the idea for this, I was working on a different game, and I was frustrated with how complex it was and how big of a task it seemed to be. So I was like, I need to come up with something simpler. That's funny that I say that now, because this is far from what that idea was. And so I went through a bunch of images that I had from long before for video game ideas, and I've really not made video games before in any real sense. But I had done some 3D renderings of ideas I had,
Mm-hmm.
and one was an idea for a game where you're tumbling a block around a board, and as you move, uh, it's taking away the spaces you were on, kind of like a puzzle game. I'm pretty sure that there were games like that back in the old days that I must have been inspired by. Um, and I thought, wouldn't it be neat to have a game where you're moving a cube around and something different is assigned to each side of the hero? So it basically just a movement game. And so I immediately grabbed some dice, 4 dice, and some sticker paper, and drew arrows on different sides of them, and a spring on one side, and whatever. Spin, stuck them on the dice, called my kids downstairs, drew out a grid on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and said, okay, we race to the middle. First one there wins, and you just tumble
Yeah.
your little cube, and we take turns, right? That was the idea. And I I don't know why, but it was immediately fun, or at least showed potential, and that's kind of where it came from, and that was 2013, I think. And then obviously it evolved a lot from there. It didn't start off as characters. Once I, got further along, I basically had these 3D printed cubes with magnets and removable faces that you would swap different, what the equivalent of skills now, basically different movement abilities on each of those faces. Some of them weren't movement, some of them were special powers. And then it was a race at the time, just like this is. So Quodd Heroes now is not just a race game. That's just one of the ways to play. But in the beginning, it was a race, but with some Robo Rally influenced board elements, like conveyor belts. In this case, my conveyor belts are water. But yeah, that's essentially it. There was no sort of grand theme, obviously, inspiration. This is
Yeah.
more of an abstract game where I've applied theme to it. But yeah, that's kind of where it began. But the idea of characters came very late in the development, because it was just these abstract cubes and a more of a science fiction-y sort of theme, kind of similar, I suppose, from a look standpoint, as I was designing things to like a Robo Rally game. But unlike Robo Rally, I mean, a lot of people call Robo Rally or call this a programming game. I strongly disagree with that idea. If you've played Robo Rally, and I'm not sure if you have, essentially you have a bunch of movement cards, and you have to program them in order, and then on your turn you go through them one by one. And there's sort of a priority that happens. It's kind of all at the same time as other players, and it's very, very chaotic because you end up moving places you don't want to be, and if you make wrong choices, your game is essentially over on the first or second turn.
Yeah.
Because it can be very hard to catch up. But anyway, so it does share some things in common with that game, mostly in terms of the boards. But I call this an action selection game because each turn you're going to choose which skills that you activate and which cards you play, and you always have control over where you go. Um, and obviously, it's a very different experience to play this versus that game. But anyway, I don't know if that answers the question, but
No, it does. It does.
yeah, so that was the inspiration, and then from there it just became what it is now. I think adding the idea of character, which was an idea that was suggested by a friend of mine when I was kind of stuck with trying to make it more appealing as a product. Like, how do I, because theme, or at least the idea of theme story characters, are more far more engaging, especially if you're planning to kickstart a thing, than just a purely abstract game.
Yeah.
And I think this adding the idea of characters became a tool for, like, essentially game design tool where ideas sprung from that.
Okay. Well, I think it's your turn.
Okay, it is. I'm going to play a bunch of cards this turn.
All right.
There is no limit to the number of cards you play on your turn. Um, all right, so I will first play this guy to see what happens. Double a rune, I roll a d6, and then I make a bunch of tokens based on the results. So this says place 2 tunnels on the board, and the range is 8. So I'll place 1 in front of me, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this comes up with token placement rules, which we haven't actually talked about. You can place tokens anywhere on the board, except you cannot cover a scenario token like a secret token or other tokens that start on the board. You can't place them under other heroes or crystals, things like that.
Okay.
And you cannot place them in pits, but you can place a tunnel in water, even though that doesn't necessarily make sense. And you can place a tunnel over a wall, which essentially removes the wall. So yeah, it's pretty flexible with where you place tokens. They can help get you out of a jam, even if you don't necessarily need that particular type of token. So there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went too far there, so I'll place it there.
Is there any way to fix this bridge?
No, you have to jump over that, or have a
Okay.
card that lets you, or use a tunnel. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play Crystal Extract, which says -1. So I'm not in my movement phase. I just get to move 1 space in any direction. So I will move myself onto the tunnel, and because I'm standing on a tunnel, I can activate it. Boink, and I go to the other side. So that's all I'll do for now. I will now actually begin my movement phase. So I will tumble onto here, and now I must rotate in a direction. So
Okay.
which way do I guess I'll just go like that. Yeah. And now my dash skill is face up, and I can dash 4 times because it's upgraded. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, grab the pink crystal, and 4. And my pink crystal power says +1 to slide and diagonal slide skills, so I'm not using that right now.
Okay.
And I will end my turn and draw an event. Flip over. Each player rotates their hero 90 degrees in the direction of their choice. So you'll just basically spin your guy. Guess I'll go that way.
Choice.
Here, yeah. There you go. And then I'll draw for my turn. And in this case, it's 1 card for me.
Okay. That's it for yours, right?
Yep. So it's your turn now. So you can use your items and pets, play cards, whatever you like before you move if you choose.
Activate this, which will +3 in my dash skill. Tumble to right here, so faces up, which is my dash. So now I can move 4.
Yep.
I'll do 1, 2. I'll activate that.
And pass through there. So that will actually end your movement because tunneling ends your movement. Yeah, unfortunately, you don't get to keep moving.
That's fine.
The reason I was able to do it is because I used the tunnel outside of my movement phase.
Yes, yes. So I've done that, and then I can now that I've done that, dig a tunnel, right?
Yeah, you can use your
that's 6 is the range.
Or you can build a wall to slow me down if you wanted. But that's probably, well, yeah, if you use one now, if you use that pet now, it's probably better to use it to stop me. And then on your next turn, during your pre-movement phase, you can place a tunnel and then move basically before you move.
I'm gonna do that all right there.
Okay.
I power down phase. Place a spring token.
Yep.
All right here. Draw my event card. Any hero carrying a crystal may explore. So then
you draw a card.
Explored.
And then we do, so it's a trigger, so we get to upgrade again.
Okay.
So choose one of your skills and flip it over. Actually, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do this.
Upgraded mine. And now that we've both explored, I draw my 1 card because
that's correct.
Okay.
All right.
That's it. Turn.
Well, I am going to do what? Well, I think I'm just going to play some teleporters and see what happens. So I have 2 of these, and I can place teleporter range 5. So I'm going to use this card that says increase the range of runes you play this turn. So I can place them up to 9 spaces away.
Okay.
But the first one I'm going to play will be here. And then, so the highest number you can roll on a teleporter is 5. So it doesn't make sense to go farther than that away. So I probably didn't need to play this one, but whatever. I'm trying to get to that secret. So the other one I will play That way I only have to roll a 2 to get to the other teleporter, which would get me farther. Or if I roll more, I could potentially get to this yellow crystal, but I'll put it here. Play it safe. All right, so my turn. I will tumble onto this and roll a d6. Oh, damn. So now I'll explain what happens when you roll. So I use the teleporter. I essentially don't get to use my movement skill, but when you roll a Q, that's a 6, the teleporter explodes.
Okay.
And I don't go anywhere. So that gets removed from the board. And when there's an explosion, it affects all adjacent spaces. So that means any tokens that are placed by players are removed within that range.
Okay.
And walls are destroyed. So this wall will go away, and this wall we will replace with a broken wall.
Okay.
So now this that was the worst possible turn for me. And
because now your actual turn is like the movement's done.
my movement is over. Yeah, I needed those teleporters to actually do something for me. The problem is, had I tumbled in a different direction, if I'd gone this way, it would activate my Q, and I wouldn't really move. Here I would jump, but I would end up jumping, like I wouldn't get to what I wanted, so I took a risk and it didn't pay off. So that's it for me. I will draw an event card. Players may not activate item cards during their next turn, so you basically flip your item card over until after your next turn. And that's it, and I'll draw a card for my diagonal slide skill. And it's your turn. Oh, wait, don't forget that you can use your tunnel ability before you move. So you could, because you're standing on a tunnel, you could place a tunnel up to 6 spaces away and then immediately move through it before beginning your movement phase.
Okay. Right there.
Yep, and then just immediately move to it. And now you can begin your movement phase or play cards.
Secret token real quick. Immediately, since I landed on it, and it's deep path. You found a subterranean passage.
Move to the nearest tunnel. If there are no tunnels on the board, right? Yeah, so basically move to the nearest tunnel and use it.
Do I have to, or is it just an option?
You may move to the nearest tunnel. Yeah, you don't have to. So you can. That would take you backwards, basically, because, I mean, although there's no real harm in doing that, but
yeah, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. So now you would activate your skill, which is diagonal slide,
which I can do. So
you whoops, you get to do it twice actually.
Yeah, well, I'm only gonna do it.
So you could go to there basically. Although your hero got wonkied up. He should be, I think, the other arm face up. You can just tumble and it will straighten it out. There you go.
Slide. Stay there.
Okay.
Card, because I'm not gonna. All players may tumble one. Thing activates. I'll let you choose if you're going to do that or not.
I think I won't. And then you'll draw.
That's it. And so now our item cards activate again, right?
So yours will flip back over. Mine not yet because I haven't had my turn. All right, I'm gonna place a spring on the board right here using my kinetic rune, and I'm just gonna tumble one, and then my back is up. I get to tumble once. Then I get my slide skill. So I
You haven't moved
I
forward
started
yet.
here, right?
Yeah.
Tumble,
You started.
tumble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so I should be here. Yeah. So then I would go to here, spring over the wall, and I get to slide one more time with my slide skill. Although I have +1 to slide and diagonal slide, so I could slide twice. I guess I will go like this. And that will end my movement. I will... Actually, you know what? It's too late. I had a card I should have played, but I didn't think I would get this far. 1, 2. I kind of want that blue crystal, but it's too late. All right, I will draw an event. Flip. Each player may slide the player to their right 1 space. So that would... And then we get to upgrade. So I will slide you to... I'm not going to be mean. I could slide you onto that, which would push you here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just go like that. And you can move me 1 space.
But it's just to the right.
Oh, no, the player to your right, which means...
So that'd be you.
Yeah, yeah. But you can go in any direction you like. Except not diagonally. That would be a dash. So a slide is just orthogonal.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll draw a card. 2 cards, actually. And it's your turn.
Okay. Use my... Can I place a tunnel underneath you?
No, you can't.
I will use my skill to place one right here. 6 away. 1, 2, 6. To kind of cut you off from the crystal.
Instead of a tunnel, you should place a wall there instead. If you want to block me, because a tunnel doesn't block movement.
Yeah, but if you land on it, you have to go backwards.
You don't have to use a tunnel, so tunnels are optional. So no, I don't
Oh,
have
okay,
to go
okay.
anywhere. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
wall is probably a better idea.
Yeah. Okay, and then I will move to right here. Tumble, but then I gotta move forward 1 because of the current. That activates my face, which is I can dash and move 1.
So this current, you would actually be here, right?
Yeah.
And then you would activate your dash, which would move you to there. Because
Oh,
the current
okay.
is only on the space where the arrow is. So this space doesn't do anything.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So now you'll jump over the wall.
Yes. Yeah,
Because the spring will...
I start right here.
Started
I
up
moved
there.
here. Dash 1. Move me that. And then the spring moves 2 spaces, correct? Or
Yeah. So you could get this crystal, or you could
Yeah.
jump next to me. That's weird. I've never seen a crystal go upside down before.
I accidentally.
There you go.
Okay, so then that's there. So next move would be to grab a event card. Flip the top card of the event deck face up and place it back on the top of the event deck. So first card, flip it, place it.
Just kind of lets us know what's coming.
Okay. And it says it
want to
triggers
know.
we upgrade.
Yeah. So I will grade my tumble.
And then power down phase, but I'm not going to use anything. My face card lets me draw one.
Okey-doke. So now I get to flip my item card back over. And what am I gonna do? Oh no, wish I had. I haven't even used my item or my pet card the entire game. The next thing is going to turn our pets off, but we can discard a food to avoid it, but I don't even know if I care. All right, I think I'm going to play this. And place a spring token right here. And I'm just going to dash. So I tumble onto that. I bounce to here on top of the wall, and then I can dash 4 times. 1 gets me the crystal. 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
So the blue crystal activate at the start of your turn. So that's not going to do anything for me this turn. I don't think.
Okay.
At the start of your turn, you made dash 2, but I've got a pit in front of me. So let's find out what that secret does. Ah, that goes to my hand. So some secret cards are like that, and they go to your hand. So I'm actually going to use this to be very mean to you.
That's fine.
Because I've been nice the whole time. Why not? So this is a crazy card that says build 6 walls within 10 spaces of your hero. So I'll build a wall here. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, that's legal. Here. Here. Oh. Here. This is really not going to be good. Actually, it'll let you teleport forward, but I can just do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's it for me. I will place all 6. And could play cards during my power down phase, but I won't. So I draw this event card, and this says players may not use pets during next turn. Flip pet cards over. If you discard a food card, you can avoid the effect. I will avoid the effect just because I don't care.
I will too. This is a food card, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And that's it. So because you're trapped at the start of your turn, you can actually teleport to the nearest. Actually, in your case, 10 spaces.
I can go there because it's a respawn, right?
Yeah, you can, and normally the closest one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 would actually be here for you, but because of your item card, you have a range of 10. So I helped you actually. I forgot about that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and when you respawn, you go queue up. You go queue.
Okay.
Yeah, you can push me right into the pit. So your queue should be up, and you can face whichever way you like in terms of rotation.
Nope. Getting what button it is. There we go. Okay. And then I could start my turn. Or is that my turn?
No, that's at the start of your turn. So if you're trapped at the start of your turn, you move before doing anything, and then your power up phase begins.
Okay, awesome. So I will move forward, which will push you into that.
Yep, and then I would respawn behind you there.
Huh? Now that I'm on my back, I get the tumble. Go there. Okay.
I could give you a hint actually that might actually make your turn go better, so that you could get over that pit. If you started on there, right?
Yeah.
It's your jump skill. Currently two.
It's on my foot.
But had you started here, you could have tumbled the other direction potentially. No.
No, so I was gonna. I think this is pretty much where I can go.
Okay.
And then
And then you
let's
get to.
see.
Yeah.
I can dash. I can, yes, dash here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then that's it for the dash. Um, and do my skill with my animal pet. Place a wall. And then now we'll draw an event card. All players may discard a card to slide one space.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
I am not either. And I draw one card. I'm done.
So I'm in a predicament here. I could respawn, but I would respawn right back to where I am, or have to go backwards to here. But that wouldn't be a good thing. So I'm gonna stay where I am because I just happen to have a card in my hand that's gonna help me out of this somewhat.
Okay.
But I wish I had more cards. So I can play this, which says ignore walls and pits this turn, or steal range 4 or dash another hero. So I'm just gonna ignore the walls in front of me with my grappling hook and see what happens. So I'll tumble to there, and I can tumble twice. One. I'm going to stop and just jump. So my jump is 4, and I can divide it in 2 and hop. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can't quite make it to the goal, but that ends my turn, and I draw 1. Oh, first event. Starting with the current player, each player may discard their hand and draw the same number of cards. Well, I have no cards in my hand, so that's not going to do me any good. And then I will draw for my turn. So, but you can make that decision whether you want to discard your cards.
That was it for you, right?
Yep. Although I did forget about my Q power, which would have let me dash at the start of my turn, but that wouldn't have helped me too much. Actually, it could have, but
You wouldn't have been
oh
able to
well.
use it because
Yeah,
is
actually,
that
you know what? You should have stolen my blue crystal from me because you were next to me, and I forgot to remind you that that was possible. But if you want to backtrack, you could do that.
no? That's okay.
Because that would be very good for you. Because at the start of your turn, you may teleport X, where X is the power rating of your item card. Although your item card is only 1, but still potentially a good thing. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, use this to discard my current item. Draw 2. Keep
Yep,
1.
and then choose.
Um, take this one.
discard that one for you.
Use my Presto drops to discard the rest of the cards in my hand. Draw 3 of them. And then I can't build tunnels underneath me, correct?
No, not without a. There are cards that let you do that.
Like there's this card. Would this allow me to put one underneath me?
No, it would have to say you can put something underneath you. Otherwise, you can't. But it would let you make 2 tunnels, but it wouldn't let you move afterward. If you have a card that says dash, I forget what it's called, then you could build 2 tunnels, dash onto the tunnel, use it, and then activate your movement and win. But I don't know what cards you have in your hand, which might enable that.
Okay. Let's see. There. 2. Rearrange my movement skills real quick. I know
Okay.
right now, technically, I'm not. Right now, I'm behind, so move to that where it'll let me draw secrets. Board 1. There, so I can draw secret cards.
Keep 1.
Jump 2 immediately. And now the movement phase is technically done, right?
Yep.
Because that's it for that.
So had you that you wouldn't have been able to predict that.
Yeah,
So
no.
never mind.
So now I'll draw the event card.
Each place a tunnel on the board. Hmm. I don't need a tunnel. I'm gonna place it here. Oh, range 7. Guess I can't do that. Okay.
That's it for the event. Draw 3.
All right. So I basically win just by tumbling onto here.
Yeah.
But yeah. Can I see what you had in your hand before? I'm curious if, like, before the 3 that you just.
This was that
rearrange your
Earth
movement
Room.
Yeah.
None
Yeah,
of
it
them
would
were.
almost impossible. You could have, at least gotten to here basically with your tunnels, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
have let you get there.
Yeah, I
But
was at the end of it, so.
that would have made a difference.
So what's a super spring?
So super spring is what's on the back of a regular spring. It is, even though the number on it, that's the old art. It jumps over 3 spaces instead of 2.
Okay.
So normal spring is 2. Like I'll have to change the numbers because the way that the numerology for jumping used to be that a jump of 1 is actually a jump over 1 space, but it confused people because the numbering was different for jump than for anything else. So now a jump of 2 is 2 spaces, but it could be just 1, for example.
What exactly? You have a Kickstarter going on right now.
Yep.
And it's for the second edition of this game.
Yeah.
And
So this is the second that we're looking at, actually.
Okay.
So the way that it's set up, this is second edition, using second edition rules and boards. So I'll let you finish your question. Sorry.
Oh no, it's just what's different between the second edition and
First edition. Yeah, so quite a bit is different. The most obvious aspects really relate to player boards. So in first edition, the player board was much physically larger, but it also was quite a bit different. So you had the 5 movement tiles. The way that the Q powers was quite different. The way they worked. Essentially, when you activated your Q last time, you got to rearrange your skills, and a secondary power, which was something like for Texi, I think it was you can draw an item card. And previously, items and pets were in the main deck. You didn't start with them, so that's another change. So it basically, having an item and pet at the start of the game lets you customize kind of an approach to how you play. The Q powers now are far more powerful and impactful. Oftentimes, previously, you wouldn't want to use your Q power. We didn't use them here, although I really could have used mine at any point because it's quite powerful, as is yours, actually. So yeah, the Q powers are quite more impactful on the game than they used to be. Also, there were no crystal powers before, that you didn't gain abilities by collecting crystals.
okay.
So that's basically the entire player experience. The way you upgrade is also different. So there was an upgrade track below where the skill tiles were before, and when you would upgrade at the end of every round. So you would go around once everybody's taken a turn. So we don't have a round structure anymore, which means that so you're always just going to keep going around in a circle. The first player doesn't change now. It used to be that it did. But at the end of every round, you would everyone would upgrade. You would choose one of your skill tiles and place it on your board, and those choices were different for each player. But that upgrade system was kind of cumbersome and involved some icons, and it was not very elegant.
Yeah.
This is much simpler. This is a much simpler system, and it focuses the attention to things that actually impact the game, and rather than people sort of trying to figure out what each of their upgrades does. So yeah, the player experience is a significant change, but things like I mentioned, the items and pets being pulled out of the Explore deck is another one.
Okay.
Also, it basically means that the stuff that you're drawing from the exploration deck is always going to help you, whereas your items and pets, because you're restricted to having only one, oftentimes you would draw from the deck and it would be like a dead draw. So that was something that we fixed. Another thing is, which is probably the most obvious visually, is the game boards. So last time around, we had modular game boards. They were 9x9 tiles, and these boards are now in a fold-out book. So this would be a book with a seam here and a sort of spiral bound, and the map folds out from it.
Okay.
And with the scenario text on here and various other things. So it does restrict us in terms of having no more than basically 2.5 boards, because there are scenarios in the second edition book that involve parts of this other page. But it makes setup a lot faster. The other previous edition of the game had hundreds of different tokens, many of which were intended as sort of sandbox elements.
Okay.
And, but a big part of what we wanted to do with second edition was make it easy to play. You can just open the book, and in the final version of this, there'll be a little sort of a mini map that shows you where to place tokens and crystals at the start. But really, setup is much faster now. Fewer tokens. The game comes with a plastic organizer to keep the tokens that are there organized.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I pushed the button.
I don't. That's not even supposed to be possible, but yeah, there are. So this is the sort of public-facing version of the TTS mod, and it's only supposed to have this race scenario. There are actually 5 or 6 that we've created in the other mod, which we plan to release eventually the entire game as on TTS, so you can play any of the 10 scenarios that are part of the main game. Also, secrets are new. So the way the secret tokens will work before is that there were just dozens of different secret tokens, and they had icons on the back. And when you flip it
Okay.
over, that would tell you what happens. But it also meant that you had lots of tokens to sort that look the same on one side, and it made setup difficult. First edition didn't come with an organizer, so you had to bag it yourself and sort of. I mean, I provided an organization scheme, but it still is such a big box game. Like something like 11 pounds or something, 11 or 12 pounds of content. And just so much to go through. And doing the tokens this way makes it so much easier because we have access to a secret deck, which lets us do a far more interesting and more thematic things with the secrets. And you don't have to, it doesn't, setup isn't a challenge. You just place any secret tokens in the places shown, and then when you draw a card. So lots of optimizations that kind of make things easier. Also, a big thing is the rule book. Even though like rules have changed in terms of how certain aspects of the game work, but the rule book is much more succinct. That what we have here in a text-only form is like a first draft, but it's written by a professional rules writer who's quite well known. But before we actually get into doing the layout, that will go through some additional iterations of making sure that we didn't miss anything.
Okay.
People had issues with the clarity on some of the rules in first edition, so a huge part of the reason for doing second edition was to make sure that when people read the rules, they understand the game and they play it properly, because that was a problem previously.
Yeah.
So I had to have a
Okay.
huge FAQ. Anyway, yeah.
And so you
Like,
have painted minis this time, right? Like the little characters are painted now.
yeah. So last time the minis were ink washed, um, and yeah, this time we're doing painted minis. So the other thing to note about this game is that oftentimes, like the actual physical game has minis and a second copy of the hero. In first edition, that was essentially just two identical minis. This time we're doing a fully painted mini and then something that looks just like these guys, what we call a hero cube. And one of them is for your hand. So if you're tumbling 3 times um, and you're not sure what's going to be face up after you tumble, that's where you can use your hero cube to sort of plan your move, your reference cube, before you move. Because it can be a tricky puzzle for some people to understand. If I'm going to tumble 7 times, which is possible with if you upgrade your tumble using cards, like where am I going to end up? And you can do that by sort of looking at it in your hand and counting it out. Yeah, and basically everything is painted this time around. The crystals looked essentially just like this in first edition. They were pretty acrylic, transparent acrylic miniatures, but this time the bases will also be painted so that they're not crystal.
Okay.
It looks more like rock. There are sheep in the game. We don't have them out here. I think they're hidden behind the screen.
No worries.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there's the sheep. Although, yeah, no, it's not working. It's not the right bag. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, basically all of the miniatures in the game come fully painted from the factory this time, and they're going to look beautiful.
Awesome. And
There's also dice.
so you said that there's a bunch of different kind of game modes. Well, what do you think your favorite is so far?
Um, that depends. I actually quite enjoy uh, pick up and deliver scenarios. So essentially, they are also a race, but those involve everyone running around to try to collect certain things. Uh, Often it's like one of each of the things. For example, one of them is collect a sheep and one of each color crystal. And what you typically have to do is those are scattered all around the board, and you have to drop them off at a certain place. So you can only carry 2 things at a time. That's kind of a rule in general for the game. So you can only have 2 crystals or 1 crystal and a sheep, that kind of thing. And you collect them and then you drop them off at a drop zone. And once you've dropped them off, that counts as you having collected them. And then you're basically racing against other people to try to collect all these things first. And you're stealing from each other and shoving each other around. So one of the things I like about that type of scenario is it highlights a lot of different aspects of the gameplay.
Yeah.
It's so there's a bit of take that in terms of, although this kind of a race, if we were playing it in a more competitive way, we would be working harder to hinder each other. And with more players, that's more obvious, right? There's less space and everybody's kind of pushing. And if somebody's in the lead, everybody kind of gangs up on them. But yeah, I love the pick up and deliver scenarios because they involve collecting things, stealing, pushing, and also cleverness, right? The game really rewards people who can think on their feet.
Yeah.
And make decisions with, all of the various cards. You always have a lot of options as to what you can do. And the more you play that, the more those options become obvious. So yeah, I really love those scenarios, but I also really like the solo play in Quodd Heroes, which is, I'm not a solo gamer in a general sense. I don't play many games solo, but I really enjoy the solo games because they give you a really thicky challenge using these mechanisms and the cards, and often they involve a certain number of turns, so you have to complete whatever this puzzle is, and those kinds of puzzles vary pretty wildly from one to another, and they're challenging, and you can complete it any number of ways, and that depends on kind of the cards you get and the hero you're using and all of that. So I do really love playing this game solo, so that's another aspect. But there are the solo stuff in second edition is an add-on because not everybody plays solo. But because it's an add-on, we've gone pretty far with making it pretty interesting and a lot of fun, and it's kind of got a semi-legacy aspect to it this time around, which didn't exist before. We had a campaign before, and it was interesting, but there wasn't a lot of story involved. It was just basically a series of puzzles. This time we're immersing people more in story and choice, and the choices you make affect how you'll do going forward, kind of thing. So I'm excited about that, to see what people think. But really, I love all of the scenarios at different types. Some are better at higher player counts. Last night we did a live stream of a 6-player sheep soccer, and that's utterly chaotic craziness. And I don't know how fun it looks to watch, but it is certainly a lot of fun to play. And the way teamwork works in the game is you can sort of share cards with each other when you're within a certain distance of your teammates. And there's strategies that come into play, and I think those kinds of games shine when you're playing them with the same experienced players over and over again, because then you kind of get a sense of what is possible, and some really insane things can happen. And I mean, that's really a hallmark of the game in general, particularly in competitive scenarios, is that things will happen that are it didn't really, nothing particularly insane happened when we played just now, but oftentimes there are some really crazy turns. And Danny, who's one of the guys who helps on the campaign, a friend of mine and backer, is particularly creative with the game and often does things that just I've never seen before. And I've played this game hundreds of times, and it's always fun to see the kinds of combos that can happen.
So what kind of pledge offerings do you have for, let's say, people that backed the first campaign and newcomers?
Yeah, so we have an upgrade pledge for first edition owners that is essentially all of the cardboard for second edition, and there's quite a lot. That's priced at $49 US, and it includes the scenario book with all the fold-out maps, includes all of the player boards for the 11 heroes from first edition, which are the same heroes from second edition, all the tokens, rule book, basically all the cardboard, including the second edition box and the plastic insert, which will get people's stuff organized. And that will also hold first and second edition combined in the same box, as long as you remove the first edition stuff that you don't need anymore, like the player boards. But it doesn't come with the plastic, since you already have the minis. But the painted minis are available as an add-on for first edition owners.
Okay.
And the second edition, for new backers, it's essentially the full game, which includes all of the miniatures and all of the cardboard. A couple hundred cards and 11 player boards, all of the tiles for them, and I think there are 12 crystals, 10 sheep miniatures, 11 different heroes with painted minis and reference cubes, and 8 bomb dice, a whole bunch of tokens, and yeah, it's a pretty big box, and the production level is kind of completely uncompromising in terms of component quality. Everything is beautiful and painted. So there is no like super affordable, and that's $139 US for that, which is really as low as it can be. So it's not an inexpensive game, but there will be a retail release for Quodd Heroes Second Edition, but it won't include painted minis or any minis really at all. It will include 2 reference cubes, like the hero cubes instead of miniatures. They're a little less expensive, less expensive to produce, but just as functional. They work just like what we have here. So it makes it affordable. It's a lot less expensive to produce, and but it will have fewer heroes. I think I don't have the exact specs on the retail edition, because we'll be partnering with other publishers for the retail editions in different languages and even in English. So it'll depend on what they think is sort of the best commercially viable product. But it will be out there in retail. It will be out there in retail for a price somewhere around $50. Just won't come with any of the plastic bling, and we'll have fewer heroes, but all of the same scenarios, cards, tokens, all of that will be identical to what we have.
So the premier experience is the Kickstarter experience.
Yeah, and it really, that edition is Kickstarter exclusive, outside of some retailers who will pledge during the campaign.
Yeah.
But what you'll find in your local stores will be a much less blinged out version of the game.
Okay. And I saw there's also 3D tokens for the walls.
Yeah. So there's an add-on that can be used either first or second edition, which includes 57 walls, which includes corner walls and straight walls, and a few T's for the scenarios that have those. So you can use those to replace, basically, you just cover these walls in the scenario. It adds a little bit more visual realism, and it also includes 3D spring tokens and teleporters and cannons. This is a cannon. We didn't actually find or use any of those in this game, but they fire out these bombs. Yeah, so all of those will also be 3D painted tokens with that add-on. It's completely optional. It's not sort of content related, but if you want to really bling out your copy of the game, it's going to be amazing. I think that's really it for add-ons, but
yeah,
go ahead. Outside of the wood stuff.
How much longer do they have on the campaign to back?
The campaign ends on September 30th, so a little less than 2 weeks left. We are 450-ish% funded at this point. So the campaign's doing pretty well, and I'm excited about the future of the game for sure, especially with the retail. We didn't get to have first edition in stores last time. It's just too expensive to produce, and even the Kickstarter edition here, just the cost of it makes it difficult for retailers, right? Because even the price that they would buy it at is quite high.
Yeah.
So having it out in retail, I'm just excited to have more people play the game, and hopefully that all goes well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you showing me the game, and honestly, it was pretty easy to pick up once I kind of got playing. And
yeah, I did notice that you picked it up quite quickly, and some people have difficulty with just this mechanism, right? The tumbling. It's difficult for them to visualize, but most experienced gamers, it's quite easy to get into. The mechanisms I think are pretty simple. The trick is just remembering how things like tokens work, like what happens when you step on a spring or a teleporter.
Yeah.
So the various board elements add new rules on their own, but those rules are simple. But when you add a whole bunch of them together, for some it can be overwhelming. But for the most part, I think it's pretty digestible experience.
And what made you decide? I know you were talking a little bit about Robo Rally and stuff like that, but what made you decide to do the six-sided person having different sets and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like the idea of that mechanism. I'm not sure why, but why it became a person was I was chatting with friends of mine uh, before the first time I kickstarted this game. I guess this was probably back around 2015 that I had this conversation. I was kind of stuck. Like I've got what I think is a really interesting game idea, but how do I make it appealing? And my buddy Darren, who's not really a board gamer, he said, "Well, why don't you just make them people?" And I was like, "That's great, but how do I do that?" And obviously, it had to be with a player board, something like what we have here,
Yeah.
where you're sort of assigning that. Because previously, the actual icon or whatever for the skill was printed directly on the cube, and I had these things that had like they were magnetic. I made them myself, and you popped in different skill tiles. So it let you be flexible with it, but also you could read it directly on the thing. So the question was, how do we make it so that you can have that experience, but know what the skill is? And so that's where the player boards came from, and yeah, and now we have these little six-sided people. It's strange, and the name Quad, it doesn't really mean anything. It was originally supposed to be, it was called Cubes, the game. I don't remember exactly how that was spelled, but there was another game out there called Cubes, and Quad, Quad, which I guess kind of means square or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a game called Quodd Heroes. It's a video game about quad runners, like a racing game with motorized vehicles. And so I didn't want to have the exact same name as that. So I thought, well, this is like Quad, but it's a combination of odd and quad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the name is silly, but yeah, and that's why we have people. And I think just the change, making these guys characters, sort of really sparked my imagination in terms of the kinds of things we could do with them.
So how did you come up with the characters? Like,
I wish I knew. I just have kind of a silly imagination. I knew I wanted to have. I think the very first character that I came up with actually was Pinky, although I don't know if he was pink at first. And I was trying to figure out how to make. I do some 3D modeling myself. I didn't create all of the models for Quodd Heroes. I created some, but I created one and thinking, well, how do I make something that's a character but also will sit flat on the table and like it has shape, but also is not going to turn over, right?
yeah.
So I created some 3D models, and the first one was Pinky Schweetz, who was just a little monster guy basically. He looked similar to this, and then I was like, well, I kind of would like to have a robot, and I don't know. The world is pretty unique. I guess you could kind of call it fantasy, but it's not really. This isn't like a traditional fantasy game. It's just it's kind of its own little world, and I think it's kind of more akin to something uh, like the Mario Brothers world or some other kind of game like that, where all kinds of things appear in there. It's not just fantasy tropes or science
Yeah.
fiction tropes or whatever. And I like the idea of a world that is not just one thing. Like I don't want to make another fantasy dungeon crawl or another zombies game or whatever, right? And that does make it more challenging because obviously fantasy games sell and people are attracted to that. But I think my objective with all of the stuff I do, and this is really Quodd Heroes first and second editions were the only published games that I have under my belt, but I have a bunch of other ideas coming, and they're all like this in the sense of they're very different, and I'm not sticking with themes that are sort of rip-offs of things that everybody already knows.
Yeah.
I like the idea of being as unique as possible, and that hurts me to some extent because uh, people look at this game from the outside and they don't know what it is, and they don't know what it's like to play, and they think maybe it's for kids or maybe it's I don't know what they think. But often I find at conventions when people walk by my booth and they see I have like a glass display case with the miniatures and the boards and stuff, and people are looking at it and they have no idea what it is. And then I walk in and say, well, do you like to hear about it? And I tell them kind of what it is and how it works. And they're like, oh, that's not what I thought at all. And that's both a good thing, and it's also a bad thing because people, oh, it's a worker placement. I love worker placement games. Uh, what is this game? You can't really say say what it is, at least in comparison to other board games. So that's been a challenge. But anyway,
Okay. All right. Well, it was nice having you, and it was good. It was fun to play the game. It's a pretty easy game to pick up for, like you said, experienced players, and I think that newcomers
yeah,
would be able to get it pretty well once they start. The mechanics, it seems like you've really worked on them since the last version, and it's a better flow
yeah,
than what you had before, and I think that you guys are heading in the right direction.
awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for
All
having me
right.
on.
Yeah, no problem.